On the coldest Christmas night, when the world celebrated warmth she would never have, a rejected, packless girl heard a dying wolf cry in the snow. She chose compassion over fear, dragged him from death with bleeding hands and an empty stomach, never knowing the broken creature in her arms was the most feared alpha king alive. And that by saving him, she would awaken a bond powerful enough to shake the werewolf world, turn enemies into kneeling warriors, and rewrite her fate from forgotten Omega to the woman the moon itself would claim. The girl everyone forgot. On the coldest night of winter, when the moon hid behind storm clouds and the city celebrated Christmas without her, Selena was walking alone through the snow, rejected, nameless, unwanted, when she heard a sound no one else noticed. A whimper. The wind screamed through the narrow streets of the city's industrial district, hurling snowflakes like frozen daggers against Selena's thin coat. Her breath came in visible clouds, each exhale a small act of defiance against the cold that wanted to claim her. Around her, the lights of the city glowed warm and gold, restaurants filled with laughter, apartment windows decorated with wreaths, families gathering around tables laden with food she could only imagine. She didn't belong to any of it. 3 months had passed since the Silver Crest Pack had expelled her. 3 months of sleeping in abandoned warehouses, of taking day labor jobs that paid in cash and asked no questions, of avoiding the eyes of other wolves who could smell the rejection on her skin like rot. In their world, a wolf without a pack was less than nothing. She was a ghost walking among the living, invisible except when someone wanted to remind her of her place. Low-ranked trash, they called her. Defective. Better off dead. Selena had stopped arguing. What was the point? She'd been born without the strength, without the connections, without the bloodline that mattered. Her parents had abandoned her to the pack's mercy when she was 12, and the pack had shown her exactly how much mercy the weak could expect. None. She pulled her coat tighter, the same threadbare thing she'd been wearing since September, and trudged through snow that was already ankle-deep. The blizzard had hit harder than the weather reports predicted. Most sensible people were indoors now, safe and warm. But Selena had been turned away from the shelter on 3rd Street. Too full, they said. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow. As if she was guaranteed to see it. Christmas music drifted from a nearby bar, all joy and bells and promises of peace on earth. Selena's stomach twisted. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. A half-eaten sandwich she'd found behind a deli, still wrapped in paper. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She was passing the entrance to an alley, one of dozens that carved through this forgotten part of the city like infected wounds, when she heard it. A sound so faint it was nearly swallowed by the wind. A whimper. Low. Pained. Animal. Selena stopped. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking. Nothing good lived in alleys like this. Nothing good happened to girls like her who went looking for trouble. But something in that sound, something broken and alone, called to the part of her that still remembered what it felt like to hope. She turned into the darkness. The alley was buried in snow, the drifts piled high against dumpsters and fire escapes. Selena's boots crunched through the crust of ice, her eyes adjusting to the shadows. The whimper came again, weaker this time, from somewhere near the back. And then she saw him. A wolf. Massive. Black as midnight, his fur matted with blood and ice. He was collapsed against the brick wall, one leg twisted at an unnatural angle, his side torn open in 3 long gashes that still wept crimson into the white snow. Even injured, even dying, there was no mistaking what he was. An alpha. Selena's breath caught. She should run. She should leave him here and pretend she'd never seen anything. Alphas were dangerous on their best days. Territorial, violent, ruthless in their hierarchies. A wounded alpha was even worse. Unpredictable. Desperate. And if anyone found out she'd helped one, if his enemies came looking, she'd be the first casualty. But as she stood there, frozen between fear and something deeper, the wolf's eyes cracked open. Golden. Intelligent. Filled with a pain that had nothing to do with his wounds. He looked at her, really looked at her, and in that gaze Selena saw something she recognized. Something that lived in her own reflection every morning when she washed her face in gas station bathrooms. Loneliness. The decision made itself. Selena dropped to her knees beside him, ignoring the cold that bit through her jeans, ignoring the voice in her head that called her every kind of fool. Her hands moved on instinct, checking his injuries, assessing the damage. The gashes were deep but clean claws, not weapons. A challenge fight maybe. Or an ambush. "It's okay," she whispered, though she had no idea if he could understand her in this form. "I've got you." She tore off her coat, the only real protection she had against the blizzard, and pressed it against his wounds. The fabric soaked through instantly, warm blood coating her fingers. She worked quickly, tearing strips from her shirt, binding the worst of the injuries with shaking hands. The wolf watched her the entire time. Silent. Still. Those golden eyes never leaving her face. "You're going to be okay," Selena murmured, not sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. "Just stay with me. Stay awake." She didn't know why she cared. This wolf, this alpha, represented everything that had hurt her. The hierarchy that had crushed her. The system that had thrown her away. He probably wouldn't even remember her kindness when he healed. He'd probably walk away without a second glance. But right now, in this moment, he was just another broken thing that the world had tried to destroy. And Selena understood that better than anyone. She pressed her hands harder against his wounds, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palms, strong, steady, refusing to quit. Her own heart hammered in response, some primal part of her recognizing the life she was fighting to save. "Please," she whispered into the darkness. "Please hold on." The wolf's eyes began to close, his breathing growing shallow. Panic surged through Selena's chest. She leaned closer, her forehead nearly touching his blood-soaked fur. "Don't you dare," she said fiercely. "Don't you dare give up." And then his eyes snapped open. Not golden anymore. Glowing. The air around them shifted, crackling with energy that made every hair on Selena's body stand on end. The ground beneath her knees trembled, a low rumble that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Power radiated from the wolf in waves, ancient, primal, vast enough to make her wolf instinct scream in terror and awe. This wasn't just an alpha. This was something far more dangerous. And she had just saved his life. Chapter 2. The Wolf Who Shouldn't Be Weak. Selena doesn't know she is holding the most feared alpha king alive, only that the wolf in her arms refuses to die. The warehouse smelled of rust and forgotten things. Selena had dragged him here through 3 blocks of blizzard, her muscles screaming, her lungs burning with frozen air. She didn't know how she'd managed it. He had to weigh at least 200 pounds in wolf form, but desperation had given her a strength she didn't know she possessed. Now he lay on a nest of old blankets she'd scavenged from a dumpster, his breathing shallow but steady. The bleeding had finally stopped, her makeshift bandages holding despite being nothing more than torn clothing and prayer. She collapsed against the wall beside him, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Her hands were still stained with his blood. Her whole body trembled from cold and adrenaline and the bone-deep terror that she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. But when she looked at him, at the rise and fall of his chest, at the way his ear twitched in sleep, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. 3 days passed like a fever dream. Selena left only to scavenge supplies, water from a gas station bathroom, food from dumpsters behind restaurants, clean fabric from a donation bin outside a church. She brought everything back to the warehouse, to the wolf who should have been dead but somehow clung to life with a stubbornness that matched her own. She changed his bandages twice daily, cleaning the wounds with bottled water and strips of cotton. She dripped water between his jaws when fever made him pant. She talked to him through the long, cold nights when sleep wouldn't come and the silence felt too heavy to bear. "I don't know why I'm doing this," she said on the second night, her voice hoarse from disuse. "You probably have a pack. People looking for you. And here I am, keeping you in a warehouse like some kind of kidnapper." The wolf's ear flicked toward her voice. His eyes remained closed, but something in the way he breathed made her think he was listening. I was part of a pack once, Selena continued, pulling her knees to her chest. Silver Crest. My parents gave me to them when I was 12 because they couldn't afford another mouth to feed. The pack took me in, but I was never really one of them. Wrong bloodline. Wrong rank. Wrong everything. She laughed bitterly. They had this ceremony when you turned 18. The alpha would declare your rank, your role, your place in the hierarchy. Everyone else got titles: warrior, hunter, guardian. Me? The alpha looked at me for about 5 seconds and said, Omega. Kitchen duty. Like I wasn't even worth the effort of a real assignment. The wolf's eyes opened then. Just a fraction. Golden and impossibly aware. Selena met his gaze, something cracking open in her chest. I tried so hard to prove myself. Volunteered for every dangerous job, every night watch, every thankless task. Thought if I just worked hard enough, they'd see me. Really see me. She swallowed hard. But the harder I tried, the more they despised me. Like my existence offended them. A low sound rumbled from the wolf's chest. Not a growl. Something softer. Almost questioning. The final straw was when the alpha's son tried to force himself on me during the harvest festival. Selena's voice went flat, emotionless. I fought back. Broke his nose. And the pack expelled me for assaulting a dominant wolf. They threw me out with nothing but the clothes on my back and told me if I ever came back, they'd kill me. She wiped her eyes roughly, angry at herself for the tears. So yeah, I know what it's like to be broken. To have the world decide you're worthless. And I couldn't leave you there. I couldn't let you die alone in the snow like garbage. The wolf stared at her for a long moment. Then, with obvious effort, he shifted closer. Just an inch. Maybe 2. But enough that his warmth reached her across the cold concrete. Selena's breath caught. You understand me, don't you? She whispered. Those golden eyes held hers, and in their depths she saw something that made her chest tighten. Recognition. Respect. Something that looked almost like wonder. On the 4th day, the wolf tried to stand. Selena rushed to his side as his legs buckled, catching him before he could tear open his wounds. Easy, she murmured, guiding him back down. You're not ready yet. He huffed in frustration, and she almost laughed. Stubborn, aren't you? I bet you're used to getting your way. Probably some big important alpha with an entire pack at your command. The wolf went very still. Selena froze, reality crashing down on her. Of course he was important. She'd known that from the moment she saw him. The size, the power, the intelligence in his eyes. Normal wolves didn't carry themselves like living weapons. Normal wolves didn't make the air tremble with their presence. I won't tell anyone, she said quickly. Whatever happened to you, whoever you're running from, it's none of my business. Once you're healed, you can leave. I won't ask questions. I won't expect anything. The wolf's gaze intensified, burning into her with an emotion she couldn't name. I just want you to live, Selena finished softly. That's all. Just live. Something shifted in his expression then. The wariness faded, replaced by something raw and unguarded. He leaned forward, pressing his massive head against her shoulder in a gesture so unexpectedly gentle that Selena's throat closed with tears. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his blood-matted fur. He smelled like snow and copper and something deeper, pine and night air and ancient earth. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. They stayed like that for a long time, 2 broken things holding each other together in the darkness. By the 7th day, Gomez knew 3 things with absolute certainty. First, the girl was his mate. Her scent had been calling to him since the moment she'd pressed her hands to his wounds, a siren song his wolf recognized even when his human mind was too injured to understand. Chamomile and honey. Starlight and steel. Impossible. Perfect. His. Second, she had no idea who he was. To her, he was just a wounded wolf she'd saved out of compassion. She didn't know he was Gomez Vanderen, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of 6 packs and feared by every wolf from here to the Arctic Circle. She didn't know his enemies had ambushed him during a treaty negotiation, or that his own council might have been involved in the betrayal. Third, she expected nothing from him. No reward. No protection. No acknowledgement. She'd saved his life and asked for nothing in return except that he keep breathing. It was the most extraordinary thing anyone had ever done for him. On the 8th night, a storm hit the city like the fist of an angry god. Thunder shook the warehouse walls. Rain pounded the metal roof in a deafening roar. The temperature dropped so fast Gomez could see frost forming on the broken windows. Selena had collapsed hours ago, exhausted from another day of scavenging and tending his wounds. She lay curled beside him now, shivering in her inadequate clothes, her lips tinged blue. Gomez tried to shift closer, to share his warmth, but pain lanced through his injuries. Frustration snarled in his chest. He was the Alpha King. He commanded armies. He'd killed challengers with his bare hands. And now he couldn't even protect the one person who mattered. Selena's shivering grew worse. Her teeth chattered. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She was going to freeze to death while he lay here useless. No. Something ancient awakened in Gomez's chest. Power he'd been holding back, power he'd been too injured to access, surged through his veins like molten gold. His wolf howled in his mind, desperate and demanding. Protect. Save. Keep. The shift began whether he was ready or not. Bones cracked. Muscles tore and reformed. Agony exploded through every nerve as his body fought to change while still wounded, still healing, still broken in a dozen places. But Gomez gritted his teeth and let it happen. Because she'd saved him when no one else would. And he'd be damned if he let her die. The Alpha King in her arms. Selena wakes with blood on her hands and a naked man kneeling in the snow before her. The cold hit her first. Biting. Merciless. Then the confusion. Why was she outside? The warehouse door hung open, spilling gray morning light across concrete and scattered debris. Her body ached like she'd been trampled, her head pounding with each heartbeat. And there was blood. Fresh blood coating her palms, smeared across her arms, staining what was left of her shirt. Panic surged through her chest. Had she been attacked? Had the wolf? Selena's gaze snapped up, searching for the massive black form she'd been tending for over a week. But where he should have been, where she'd last seen him before exhaustion claimed her, stood something else entirely. A man. Naked. Powerful. Kneeling in the snow that had blown through the open door. Selena scrambled backward, her spine hitting the warehouse wall. Her breath came in sharp gasps. This wasn't possible. This wasn't. The man lifted his head. Golden eyes. The same eyes that had watched her with impossible intelligence. The same eyes that had held hers through confessions and storms and long, quiet nights. You, she breathed. He was massive even in human form, easily 6.5 feet of pure muscle, his shoulders broad enough to block out the weak sunlight. Dark hair fell past his jaw, matted with sweat and melted snow. His face was all sharp angles and brutal beauty, the kind of features that belonged on ancient statues or medieval kings. Scars crisscrossed his chest and arms, silver against bronze skin, a map of violence survived. But it was the presence that crushed her. Raw dominance rolled off him in waves, an invisible pressure that made her wolf instinct scream in terror and submission. The air itself seemed to bend around him, heavy with authority, so ancient it felt like standing before a force of nature. This was an alpha. A real alpha. Nothing like the petty pack leaders she'd known. This was something far more dangerous. Please, Selena whispered, her voice cracking. Please, I didn't know. I thought you were just, she choked on the words. Just what? Just a wounded animal? Just something she could help without consequences? She'd saved the wrong creature. She'd brought a predator into her shelter, tended him, talked to him, trusted him. And now he was here, transformed, powerful, and she was trapped against a wall with nowhere to run. I won't tell anyone, she said desperately. I swear. Whatever you are, whoever you're hiding from, I'll forget I ever saw you. Just let me go. Please. The man's expression shifted. Something flickered across his face, hurt, maybe, or disappointment, before it hardened into something unreadable. Then he did something that stopped Selena's heart. He bowed his head. Not a slight nod. A full, deliberate lowering of his gaze, his posture dropping into something that looked almost like reverence. For a long moment, he stayed like that, kneeling in the snow, his breath creating small clouds in the frozen air. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep as thunder, rough from disuse. Forgive me. Selena blinked. What? For frightening you. He lifted his eyes again, and the weight of his gaze nearly drove her to her knees. That was not my intention. I don't understand. She shook her head, confusion drowning out fear. Why are you? She gestured helplessly at his kneeling form. Why are you doing that? Because you saved my life, he said simply. And I have never been in anyone's debt before. The words hung in the air between them, enormous and impossible. Who are you? Selena whispered. A muscle worked in his jaw. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he straightened, still kneeling but no longer bowing, and spoke with a formality that made the warehouse feel like a throne room. My name is Gomez Vandren, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Ruler of the Blackstone, Ironwood, Silver Peak, Nightfall, Storm Ridge, and Frostbound Pax. His eyes never left hers. And you pulled me from death when the rest of the world would have left me to rot. The world tilted. Alpha King. The Alpha King. Selena had heard the stories. Every wolf had. Gomez Vandren was a legend whispered in fearful tones around pack fires. They said he'd killed his father in single combat at 16. They said he ruled the North with an iron fist, crushing rebellion before it could take root. They said he was brilliant and brutal, strategic and savage, more monster than man. They said he'd never been defeated, never been challenged, never been anything less than invincible. And she dragged him through a blizzard, talked to him about her pathetic life, cried into his fur like he was a therapy dog. Oh God, Selena breathed. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I would never have what? Helped him? Left him to die? I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I meant no disrespect. I just thought. Stop. His voice cut through her spiraling panic. You have nothing to apologize for. But I saved my life. He leaned forward slightly, intensity burning in his gaze. Tended my wounds for 8 days without rest. Gave me your food, your water, your warmth. Asked for nothing in return. His voice dropped lower, rougher. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How impossible? Selena pressed harder against the wall, wishing she could disappear into the concrete. I didn't do it for reward. I know. Something shifted in his expression, wonder mixing with what looked almost like pain. That's what makes it extraordinary. Silence stretched between them, broken only by wind howling through the open door. Selena's mind raced, trying to process the impossibility of her situation. The Alpha King was kneeling before her. The most powerful wolf in 6 territories was thanking her like she'd done something heroic instead of simply decent. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. What happened to you? The question escaped before she could stop it. How did you end up in that alley? Gomez's jaw tightened. Betrayal. My council called a treaty negotiation with the Eastern Alphas. When I arrived, it was an ambush. 6 Alphas and their seconds, all armed with silver. He touched his side, where the wounds were still healing beneath dried blood. They meant to end me. Would have succeeded, too, if I hadn't run. The admission seemed to cost him something. Alpha Kings didn't run. They didn't show weakness. They certainly didn't confess vulnerability to nameless girls in abandoned warehouses. I'm sorry, Selena said softly. He looked at her sharply. Sorry. That people you trusted tried to kill you. That must have been, she swallowed. I know what betrayal feels like. Something cracked in his expression. For just a moment, the Alpha King disappeared, replaced by someone who looked almost human. Almost breakable. Yes, he said quietly. You do. They stared at each other across the cold warehouse, two broken things who'd somehow found each other in the dark. Selena's fear hadn't disappeared. He was still dangerous, still powerful, still capable of crushing her with a thought, but underneath it bloomed something else. Understanding. Recognition. The same loneliness she'd seen in his wolf eyes. "What happens now?" she asked. Gomez opened his mouth to answer. The warehouse door exploded inward. Armed wolves poured through the opening, at least a dozen of them, weapons drawn and fangs bared. Their eyes glowed with hunting focus, their movements coordinated and lethal. Elite guards. Trained killers. They spread through the warehouse in seconds, surrounding Selena and Gomez in a loose circle. Their shock was palpable when they saw their target, not fleeing, not fighting, but kneeling in the snow before a girl who looked half dead from starvation. The lead guard, a scarred woman with white blonde hair, stepped forward. Her silver blade caught the morning light. "Alpha King Gomez Vandren," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You are charged with abandoning your territory and consorting with enemies. Surrender yourself for judgment." Her gaze flicked to Selena, cold and dismissive. "And someone remove this trash before she contaminates our king further." The girl who touched the moon. The guards are ready to kill Selena until Gomez orders them to kneel. "Touch her," Gomez said, his voice dropping to a register that made the warehouse walls tremble, "and I will tear your throat out with my bare hands." The lead guard froze, her blade halfway to Selena's throat. Shock rippled through the circle of warriors, their weapons lowering incrementally as they processed what they'd heard. The Alpha King threatening his own guards. Over a girl. Over this girl. "Your Majesty," the blonde guard said carefully, "this Omega has clearly used some kind of enchantment on you. We must remove her before." "Kneel." The word cracked like a whip. Silence. Complete and suffocating. Then slowly the guards dropped to their knees. All of them. Even the lead guard, whose face had gone white with fury and confusion, lowered herself to the concrete. Their heads bowed. Their weapons clattered to the ground. Gomez rose to his full height, still naked, still wounded, but suddenly every inch the King Selena had heard about in stories. Power radiated from him like heat from a fire, undeniable and absolute. "This woman saved my life when I was bleeding out in an alley," he said, his voice carrying the weight of royal decree. "She gave me shelter, food, warmth. She asked for nothing, expected nothing, and you dare call her trash?" The lead guard's jaw clenched. "Your Majesty, she is rejected. Packless. The law states that. I am the law." Gomez's eyes flashed gold. "And I declare that Selena," he paused, turning to her with an expression that was almost gentle. "What is your family name?" "I don't have one," Selena whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was just Selena." Something flickered across his face. Anger. Grief. Recognition. "Then she is Selena of my household," he said, turning back to the guards. "Under my direct protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or speaks of her with disrespect answers to me personally. Is that understood?" "Yes, Alpha King," the guards chorused, though their voices held barely concealed rage. The lead guard rose stiffly. "We will escort you both back to Blackstone Palace. There are matters that require your immediate attention." Her gaze slid to Selena with pure venom. "We've prepared appropriate quarters for your guest." The way she said guest made it sound like an insult. Blackstone Palace was a monument to power. Selena had never seen anything like it. The fortress rose from the mountainside like something carved by gods, all black stone and soaring towers, with windows that gleamed like watching eyes. The northern territories spread below in a tapestry of forest and snow, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Inside was worse. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars. Marble floors polished to mirrors. Tapestries depicting wolf battles and ancient ceremonies. Everywhere Selena looked, she saw wealth beyond imagining, luxury she couldn't begin to comprehend. And everywhere she walked, she felt their eyes. Wolves lined the corridors, guards, servants, nobles. All staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. Whispers followed her like smoke. That's her? The Omega? What could the king possibly see in something so weak? Witch. Has to be. There's no other explanation. Manipulator. Probably poisoned him. Omega filth shouldn't even be allowed in the palace. Selena kept her eyes down, following the guard who'd been assigned to escort her. Her clothes torn, blood-stained, pathetic, marked her as an intruder in this world of silk and silver. She didn't belong here. Every cell in her body screamed it. They led her to a room in the servants' wing. Small. Plain. A bed, a dresser, a single window overlooking the kitchen yard. The guard opened the door with barely concealed contempt. Dinner is at 7. You'll eat in the servants' hall. She looked Selena up and down. Try not to embarrass the king more than you already have. The door slammed shut, leaving Selena alone in the suffocating silence. She lasted exactly 30 seconds before the tears came. Days blurred together in a haze of hostility and isolation. Selena tried to make herself useful, volunteering in the kitchens, offering to help with laundry, anything to justify her presence. But the palace staff wanted nothing to do with her. They assigned her the worst tasks: scrubbing floors, emptying chamber pots, hauling water from the well at dawn. When she entered a room, conversation stopped. When she spoke, no one answered. The nobles were worse. They attended court functions in clothes that cost more than Selena had seen in her lifetime, their wolves strong and their bloodlines pure. They watched her with the same expression people reserved for insects, not quite worth crushing, but certainly not worth acknowledging as equal. Lady Morgana, the Alpha King's chief advisor, took particular pleasure in her cruelty. Tell me, little Omega, she purred one afternoon when Selena delivered tea to the council chamber. What services did you provide the king during his recovery? I'm sure we're all curious how someone like you managed to capture his attention. The implication hit like a slap. The council members snickered. Selena's hands shook as she poured the tea. I just helped him heal, my lady. How charitable. Morgana's smile was all teeth. Though I wonder if the king realizes the danger of keeping strays. They tend to carry disease. More laughter. Selena fled before they could see her cry. But through it all, she caught glimpses of Gomez. In the courtyard, training with his guards. In council meetings, his voice carrying through closed doors. Walking the palace corridors with that predatory grace that made everyone step aside. He always found her eyes across the distance. Always held her gaze for just a moment too long. And something in those golden depths made her chest ache with emotions she didn't dare name. 2 weeks after her arrival, Gomez summoned her to his chambers. Selena's stomach twisted with anxiety as guards escorted her through the palace's upper levels, where she'd never been allowed. The Alpha King's wing was forbidden to everyone except his closest advisors. The fact that he'd called for her would fuel gossip for weeks. The guards opened massive oak doors and shoved her inside. Gomez stood by the window, backlit by moonlight. He'd healed completely in the past 2 weeks, his wounds nothing but silver scars across bronze skin. He wore black pants and nothing else, his powerful frame relaxed, but ready, like a predator at rest. You called for me, Your Majesty? Selena kept her eyes down, her voice small. Look at me. She lifted her gaze slowly. The full moon illuminated his face, turning his eyes to molten gold. I've been watching you, he said quietly. Seeing how they treat you. Hearing what they say. Shame burned through her. I'm sorry. I know I don't belong here. If you want me to leave. No. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just inches away. I want you to understand something. My wolf has been wild since I was 16. Uncontrollable. Violent. The only thing keeping me from losing myself completely was constant vigilance and iron will. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were warm against her skin. But when you're near, he continued, his voice rough with wonder, my wolf is calm. Quiet. At peace for the first time in years. His hand cupped her cheek. You don't manipulate me, Selena. You save me. Every single day. Tears pricked her eyes. They think I'm using you. Let them think what they want. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I know the truth. A knock interrupted them. Gomez dropped his hand, his expression shifting back to the Alpha King. Enter. An elderly man in ceremonial robes stepped inside, Elder Theron, head of the Moon Council. His eyes widened when he saw Selena, surprise flickering across his weathered face. Alpha King, he said, bowing low. The full moon ritual begins in 1 hour. The sacred stone has been prepared. I'll be there. Gomez dismissed him with a nod, but the elder lingered, his gaze fixed on Selena with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Forgive me, but would the young woman care to observe the ceremony? It is rare for outsiders to witness our sacred rites, but he glanced at Gomez. Given her unique position in your household, perhaps an exception could be made. Gomez's jaw tightened. She's not. I'd like to see it, Selena said quickly, surprising herself. If it's allowed. The elder smiled. Then it is settled. The sacred grove was ancient beyond measure. Massive stones formed a circle beneath the full moon, their surfaces carved with symbols that seemed to writhe in the silver light. The pack gathered in concentric rings around the center, where a single black stone rose from the earth like a tooth. Gomez stood before it, shirtless despite the cold, his skin painted with ceremonial marks. The pack chanted in a language Selena didn't recognize, their voices rising and falling like tide. She watched from the outer edge, trying to stay invisible. But Elder Theron appeared beside her, his expression strange and considering. Come, he said softly. Let me show you something. Before she could protest, he led her through the crowd. Wolves parted reluctantly, their hostility palpable. They stopped at the edge of the inner circle, close enough to feel the power radiating from the sacred stone. This stone has marked true Lunas for 1,000 years, Theron explained. Queens chosen by the moon itself to rule beside kings. When a true Luna touches it, the stone recognizes her bloodline, responds to her essence. Why are you telling me this? Selena whispered. Because I have never seen an Alpha King's wolf respond to anyone the way his responds to you. And I am curious. He gestured to the stone. Touch it. I can't. I'm not. Humor an old man. Selena looked at Gomez, who had gone completely still, his eyes locked on her with an expression she couldn't read. The pack watched with barely concealed contempt, waiting for her to humiliate herself. She almost refused, almost walked away. But something in the moonlight called to her. Something ancient and patient and impossibly familiar. Selena stepped forward and placed her hand on the sacred stone. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the stone exploded with silver light. Not a glow. Not a shimmer. An eruption of radiance so bright it turned night into day, so powerful the pack stumbled backward with cries of shock and fear. The light wrapped around Selena like living water, cold and clean and absolutely overwhelming. Symbols flared across the stone's surface, ancient marks that hadn't appeared in centuries, blazing with recognition. And in the stunned silence that followed, Elder Theron's voice rang out clear and absolute. She carries the mark of a true Luna. The bloodline we thought extinct. The queens of the moon themselves have chosen her. His eyes met Gomez's across the grove, wide with disbelief and dawning understanding. Your Majesty, he said slowly, I believe you've found your mate. Chapter 5, The Rejected Who Refuse to Kneel. Selena is offered power if she abandons her compassion. The council chamber felt like a tomb. 12 elders sat in a semicircle, their faces carved from stone and shadow. Elder Theron stood at their center, his earlier wonder replaced by calculation. Behind them, the sacred texts lay open on pedestals, ancient pages glowing faintly in candlelight. Selena stood in the middle of the chamber, still trembling from what had happened at the stone. The silver light had faded, but she could still feel it beneath her skin, humming, waiting, impossibly alive. Gomez stood to her right, tension radiating from his frame. He'd barely spoken since the grove, his jaw locked tight, his eyes tracking every movement the elders made. The mark is undeniable, Elder Theron said finally. The sacred stone has not responded this way in 300 years. Not since Luna Katarina touched it before her coronation. Impossible, Lady Morgana spat from her position beside the council. She's rejected. Packless. Omega filth. There must be some mistake. The stone does not make mistakes, Theron replied evenly. She carries true Luna blood. How it survived in such a diminished vessel is a mystery we must investigate. But the mark is real. Diminished vessel. The words hit like a slap. Elder Kasha, a woman whose silver hair reached the floor, leaned forward. The question is not whether she carries the mark. The question is whether she is worthy to wield it. Explain, Gomez said, his voice sharp as a blade. A true Luna is more than bloodline, Alpha King. She is leadership, strength, wisdom, the balance to an alpha's power. Kasha's eyes fixed on Selena with cold assessment. This girl has spent her life being rejected, discarded, broken. How can someone who couldn't even hold her place in a common pack possibly stand beside a king? Selena's throat tightened. They weren't wrong. She was broken. She had been discarded. Every pack she'd ever known had looked at her and found her wanting. She saved my life, Gomez growled. Admirable, Elder Marcus interjected, his voice dry as desert sand. But compassion alone does not make a queen. She must prove herself capable of ruling, of making impossible choices, of commanding respect. She has my respect, Gomez snapped. But not ours. Lady Morgana's smile was poison. And not the pack's. You saw how they reacted in the grove, Alpha King. Shock. Horror. Disbelief. They will never accept an Omega as their Luna, blood mark or not. Silence fell like a hammer. Elder Theron cleared his throat. There is a precedent. A way forward if the girl is willing. What way? Selena found her voice, though it came out smaller than she wanted. Submission, Theron said simply. You must undergo the Luna trials, a series of tests designed to strip away weakness and forge strength. If you survive, if you prove yourself worthy, the pack will accept you. You will be reborn as true Luna, leaving your rejected past behind forever. And if she fails? Gomez asked quietly. Then the mark was a fluke. A mistake of fate. Kasha waved a dismissive hand. She will be exiled, and we will search for the real Luna elsewhere. Selena's heart hammered against her ribs. They were offering her everything she'd ever wanted. A place. A purpose. Power. No more sleeping in abandoned buildings. No more scrounging for food. No more being invisible. All she had to do was prove she deserved it. What would the trials involve? She asked. Elder Marcus smiled, and it wasn't kind. Combat. Strategy. Endurance. You would face challenges designed to break lesser wolves. You would be tested in ways that would destroy your compassion, your softness, your weakness. He leaned forward. You would emerge as Luna, or you would not emerge at all. Many don't survive, Lady Morgana added, barely concealing her eagerness. The trials are not meant to be passed. They're meant to prove that only the strongest deserve to rule. Gomez moved so fast Selena barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next he was across the room, his hand wrapped around Morgana's throat, lifting her off the ground. If you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, he said softly, I will rip out your spine and wear it as a necklace. Alpha King. Theron's voice cracked like thunder. Control yourself. Gomez dropped Morgana, who crumpled gasping to the floor. But his eyes never left the council. You will not use these trials to murder her. We use them to test her, Kasha said coldly. As they were designed. As they have always been used. If she is truly meant to be Luna, she will survive. If not, she shrugged. Then fate will have spoken. Selena looked at the faces around her. The elders, calculating and cold. Lady Morgana, hatred burning in her eyes. Even Elder Theron, who'd shown her kindness, now watched her with the detached interest of someone observing an experiment. They didn't see her as a person. They saw her as a problem to be solved. A threat to be eliminated or controlled. Just like every other pack she'd ever known. No, Selena said quietly. Every head turned toward her. I'm sorry. Elder Kasha's voice could have frozen fire. No. Selena lifted her chin, her heart racing, but her voice steady. I won't submit to your trials. I won't let you break me down and rebuild me into whatever you think a Luna should be. Then you refuse the mark? Theron asked, disbelief coloring his tone. I refuse to become cruel to earn your approval. Selena's hands trembled, but she forced them still. You want me to prove I'm worthy by abandoning the things that make me who I am. My compassion. My softness. The part of me that saw a dying wolf and chose to help instead of walk away. She looked at Gomez, her chest aching. That's the part that saved him. And you want me to kill it? You would throw away power? Morgana laughed harshly. You would choose to remain nothing? I'd rather be nothing than become you. The words hung in the air like a curse. Elder Marcus stood slowly, his face darkening with rage. You dare insult this council? You, who should be grateful we even consider you worthy of trials. I dare, Selena said, surprised by her own strength, because I've spent my whole life being told I'm not enough. That I need to change, to submit, to break myself into smaller and smaller pieces until I fit into boxes other people built. Her voice grew stronger. I'm done. If the moon chose me, it chose me as I am. Not as you want me to be. Selena, Gomez started, but she cut him off. Thank you for your hospitality, Alpha King. But I think it's time I left. She turned and walked toward the door. If you walk out that door, Elder Kasha called after her, you will be exiled. Cast out. You will have nothing. Selena paused at the threshold. I've had nothing my whole life, she said quietly. At least now I'll have my self-respect. She walked out into the night. The storm hit before she reached the palace gates. Not a natural storm. This was rage made manifest. Wind that screamed like dying wolves, snow that fell in sheets so thick Selena couldn't see 3 feet ahead. The temperature plummeted, cold so intense it burned her lungs. Behind her, she heard shouting. Guards running. Panic spreading through the palace like wildfire. Selena kept walking. Her feet carried her down the mountain path, away from Blackstone, away from the life she could have had. Tears froze on her cheeks. Her body shook with cold and exhaustion and grief that threatened to swallow her whole. She'd made the right choice. She knew that. But God, it hurt. The full moon emerged from behind storm clouds, and Selena felt it like a physical blow. Power surged through her veins, that same silver light from the grove, but wilder now, uncontrolled. Her wolf howled inside her chest, desperate and confused. Inside the palace, wolves began to shift involuntarily. Their control shattered, their beasts taking over, chaos erupting through every corridor and courtyard. Selena heard their howls echoing across the mountain, pain and fear, and something primal breaking loose. The balance was rupturing. She collapsed to her knees in the snow, gasping for breath. The power inside her swelled, too much, too fast, threatening to tear her apart from the inside. Behind her, she heard footsteps crunching through snow. Heavy. Determined. Selena. Gomez's voice, rough with emotion she couldn't name. Go back, she managed, her voice breaking. Your pack needs you. My pack is falling apart because their Luna is walking away. I'm not their Luna. I refused, remember. The moon doesn't care what you refused. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands gripping her shoulders. Look at me. She met his golden eyes, seeing her own anguish reflected back. When you walked out that door, Gomez said, his voice raw, every wolf in my territory felt it. The bond breaking. The balance shattering. You think you're refusing power, but you're refusing what you already are. I won't become what they want, Selena whispered. I don't want you to. His hands cupped her face, urgent and gentle. I want you exactly as you are. The woman who saved me. The woman who chose compassion over fear. That's the Luna my pack needs. That's the Luna I... He stopped, something flickering across his face. But before he could finish, Selena's vision went white. Silver light erupted from her body, exploding outward in a wave that lit up the entire mountain. Power poured from her in torrents, ancient, unstoppable, terrifying in its magnitude. The storm ceased instantly. The wolves in the palace stopped mid-shift, their control snapping back into place. And Selena, at the center of it all, felt the truth crash down on her like an avalanche. The moon hadn't chosen her to be powerful. It had chosen her to be balanced. The light grew brighter, impossibly bright, consuming everything in silver radiance. And then the world went dark. The alpha who chose love over power. The moon rejects the throne and only Selena can calm it. Gomez carried her through the chaos. Behind them, Blackstone Palace burned with silver fire. Not flames, pure lunar energy, cascading from the towers like waterfalls of light. The sacred stone in the grove had cracked down the middle, its ancient power unleashed and raging. Wolves ran through the corridors in panic, their beasts clawing at their minds, their control shredded by the imbalance. The moon was screaming, and only the unconscious woman in his arms could make it stop. Gomez kicked open the doors to his private chambers, dismissing the guards with a snarl. He laid Selena on his bed. Too large for her, too luxurious, everything she'd been denied her entire life, and pressed his fingers to her throat, feeling for a pulse. There. Weak but steady. Relief crashed through him so violently his knees almost buckled. Stubborn woman, he breathed, brushing snow-dampened hair from her face. Couldn't just accept the easy path, could you? The door burst open. Elder Theron stumbled in, his robes scorched, his eyes wild. Alpha King, the moon is rejecting us. The sacred rites have failed. Wolves across all 6 territories are losing control. We need... Get out. But... I said get out. Gomez didn't raise his voice, but the command hit like a physical blow. Tell the council they can burn. Tell them the moon's wrath is their reward for trying to break the one person who could save them. Tell them whatever you want. Just leave. Theron's face went pale. You would choose one girl over your entire kingdom? Gomez looked at Selena. Small and broken and impossibly strong, still glowing faintly with silver light. The woman who'd saved him when she had every reason to let him die. The woman who'd refused power rather than compromise her soul. Yes, he said simply. Now go. The elder fled. Gomez returned to Selena's side, taking her hand carefully. Her skin was ice cold, her breathing too shallow. The silver light beneath her skin pulsed erratically, like a heart beating out of rhythm. She was dying. Burning herself up trying to hold together a balance the pack refused to accept. I'm sorry, Gomez whispered, his voice breaking. I should have protected you from them. Should have stood between you and their cruelty. Should have told them all to go to hell the moment they demanded you change. Thunder cracked overhead. The palace shuddered. I've been alone my whole life, he continued, words pouring out like blood from a wound. Surrounded by people who wanted my power, my protection, my favor. But never me. Never just me. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And then you stumbled into that alley and saved my life without knowing who I was. Without expecting anything. You saw me bleeding in the snow and chose compassion. Selena's fingers twitched in his grip. I'm not good at this, Gomez said roughly. Love. Vulnerability. I've spent 30 years building walls so high nothing could reach me. But you. His voice caught. You walked right through them like they were made of paper. The light beneath her skin pulsed brighter. I don't care what the council says. I don't care what the pack thinks. I don't care if choosing you costs me my throne. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. I choose you, Selena. Not because the moon says you're my mate. Not because you carry Luna blood. But because you're the only person who ever saw me as more than a crown. He took a shaking breath. I love you, he whispered. And I'm sorry I didn't say it before you walked away. Silence. Heavy and absolute. Then Selena's eyes opened. Not brown anymore. Pure silver, glowing like captured moonlight. You're an idiot, she said, her voice hoarse but strong. Gomez laughed, a broken, relieved sound. Probably. Definitely. She tried to sit up, grimacing. You were supposed to let me go. Let me walk away with dignity. Since when do I do what I'm supposed to do? Since never, apparently. Her silver eyes searched his face, seeing everything he'd tried to hide. You meant it? About choosing me over the throne. Every word. Even though I'm broken? You're not broken. He cupped her face with both hands. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Strong enough to choose kindness in a world that punished you for it. Strong enough to walk away from power when it demanded you become something you're not. His voice dropped to a whisper. Strong enough to save me. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm scared. So am I. I don't know how to be a Luna. Then we'll figure it out together. He smiled, and it was real, no walls, no armor. On your terms. Not theirs. Never theirs. Selena stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, she placed her hand over his heart. The bond ignited. It wasn't gentle. It was a supernova. Silver and gold crashing together, two souls recognizing each other across lifetimes. Power flooded through them both, ancient and new, terrifying and perfect. The mating bond snapped into place with such force the palace walls cracked, windows shattering, foundations trembling. Outside, across all 6 territories, every wolf felt it. The balance restored. The Luna accepted. The moon finally satisfied. The chaos stopped instantly. Wolves regained control of their beasts. The silver fire consuming the palace vanished. The storm clouds parted, revealing a full moon so bright it turned night into silver day. And in Gomez's chambers, wrapped in each other's arms, 2 broken souls became whole. I love you too, Selena whispered against his chest. You terrifying, impossible man. He pulled back just enough to look at her, golden eyes meeting silver. Will you stand beside me? Not as my subject. Not as someone beneath me. But as my equal. On one condition. Name it. No more councils deciding my worth. No more trials. No more proving myself to people who've already decided I'm not enough. Her voice hardened with steel. I am Luna because the moon chose me. Because you chose me. Because I choose myself. And anyone who has a problem with that can leave. Gomez's smile was sharp as a blade. I'll help them pack. The door burst open again. This time it was Lady Morgana, her face twisted with rage. This is an outrage. And Omega cannot. The full force of the mating bond hit her like a wall. She stumbled backward, her words dying in her throat as she felt the power radiating from both Gomez and Selena, not separate anymore, but intertwined, amplified, absolutely undeniable. Behind her, the council members crowded in the doorway, their expressions ranging from shock to horror to grudging acceptance. Elder Theron fell to his knees. Luna, he breathed. Forgive us. One by one, the others followed. Even Lady Morgana, though hatred still burned in her eyes, lowered herself to the ground. Selena stood slowly, Gomez rising with her, their hands still linked. She looked at the kneeling wolves, the people who'd called her trash, demanded she break herself, tried to drive her away. Get up, she said quietly. They obeyed, confusion written across their faces. I'm not your Luna because I proved myself worthy, Selena continued, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I'm your Luna because the moon knows what you forgot, that strength isn't cruelty. That power isn't dominance. That leadership is service, not control. She stepped forward, and they instinctively stepped back. I will stand beside your king. I will help lead these territories. But I will do it my way. With compassion. With justice. With the understanding that every rejected wolf, every outcast, every person this hierarchy has crushed deserves to be seen. Her silver eyes blazed. And if you cannot accept that, there's the door. Silence stretched like a held breath. Then Elder Kasha, ancient and proud, bowed her head. Luna, she said simply. We accept. The others echoed her. Even Morgana, though the words seemed to poison her mouth. Gomez's hand tightened around Selena's, pride radiating through their bond. Later, when the council had dispersed and the palace settled into uneasy peace, Gomez pulled Selena onto the balcony. The city spread below them, lights glowing warm against silver snow. There's a tradition, he said softly. During the full moon closest to Christmas, the pack celebrates with a festival. Food, music, ceremony. And the Alpha King marks his Luna before the entire kingdom. Selena's breath caught. Marks. A bite. Here. He traced his fingers along her neck, where shoulder met throat. It's permanent. Public. A declaration that we belong to each other. When is the festival? Gomez smiled. Tomorrow night. Christmas Eve. She looked out at the city, at the life she'd been given, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Purpose. Home. Then I suppose, she said, turning to face him, the city should prepare for its first lunar Christmas in history. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. Are you ready for this? For everything it means. Selena thought of the girl who'd been thrown out into the snow. The girl everyone forgot. The girl who'd chosen compassion when the world offered only cruelty. She thought of how far she'd come. How far she still had to go. No, she admitted. But I will be. Gomez kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Then we'll face it together. The moon shone down on them both, blessing what had been broken and making it sacred. The queen born in the snow. The girl thrown out into the cold returns crowned by moonlight. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in silver and silence. Snow fell gently over Blackstone territory, each flake catching moonlight and glowing like a fallen star. The city transformed overnight, buildings draped in garlands of pine and winter roses, streets lined with lanterns that burned with both fire and lunar magic. Music drifted through the cold air, ancient carols mixed with wolf songs, celebration threaded through with something sacred. The Lunar Christmas Festival. The first in 300 years. Selena stood before the mirror in chambers that were now hers, barely recognizing her reflection. The dress was simple but devastating, white silk that flowed like water, cut to honor her body rather than hide it. Silver embroidery traced patterns along the hem and sleeves, symbols she was only beginning to understand. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, threaded with winter flowers and moonstone. She looked like a queen. She felt like an imposter. Stop that, Gomez said from the doorway, reading her thoughts through their bond. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his own ceremonial clothes making him look even more imposing, black leather and silver clasps, his hair pulled back to reveal the sharp lines of his face. You belong here. Do I? Selena touched the dress nervously. A month ago I was sleeping in warehouses. Now I'm supposed to. Be exactly who you are. He turned her to face him. That's all anyone expects. All I expect. What if I fail? Then we fail together. His smile was soft, just for her. But you won't. You've never failed at being yourself. Don't start now. A knock interrupted them. Elder Theron entered, carrying a velvet box. His expression was carefully neutral, but Selena caught the glimmer of respect in his eye. Luna, he said, bowing. The crown. He opened the box, revealing a circlet of silver so delicate it seemed made of moonlight itself. Not heavy or ostentatious. Just simple, elegant, perfect. Selena's throat tightened. I can't. You can. Gomez took the crown carefully, holding it like something precious. And you will. He placed it on her head, his hands lingering in her hair. The metal settled against her skin, cool and light, and something clicked into place. Not just physically. Something deeper. More fundamental. She was Luna. Not because anyone had given her permission, but because she'd chosen it. The pack awaits, Theron said quietly. When you're ready. They walked through the palace together, Gomez's hand steady at the small of her back. Wolves lined the corridors, guards, servants, nobles, all bowing as they passed. Their expressions varied wildly. Some showed genuine respect. Others barely concealed hostility. Most just looked confused, still trying to reconcile the rejected Omega with the crowned Luna. Selena kept her head high, the crown steady, her steps sure. The festival square was a sea of wolves. Thousands of them, gathered beneath the full moon and glowing lanterns. The sacred stone had been moved to the center of the square, its crack now sealed with silver, a reminder of what had almost been lost. All 6 packs were represented, their alphas standing in a circle around the stone, their expressions ranging from awe to resentment. When Selena and Gomez emerged onto the platform, the crowd fell silent. Every eye fixed on the girl who shouldn't be there. The Omega who'd somehow become Luna. The rejected who now wore a crown. Gomez raised his hand, and the silence deepened. 3 weeks ago, he said, his voice carrying across the square, I was ambushed by enemies who wanted me dead. I should have died in that alley. Would have died if not for a girl who chose compassion over fear. He turned to Selena, his eyes holding hers. She had no reason to help me. No reason to risk herself for a stranger bleeding in the snow. But she did it anyway. Not because she expected reward. Not because she knew who I was. But because it was right. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I have ruled for 15 years, Gomez continued. I have led armies. Crushed rebellions. Built an empire on strength and fear. And in all that time, I never understood what real power looked like. His hand found Selena's. Until she showed me. He pulled her forward, presenting her to the pack. Real power is choosing kindness when the world punishes you for it. Real strength is refusing to become cruel just because cruelty is rewarded. Real leadership is service, not dominance. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. This woman taught me that. And I am better for it. He knelt. The Alpha King of 6 territories, the most feared wolf alive, dropped to one knee before his Luna. The crowd gasped. Several wolves stumbled backward in shock. Even the other alphas looked stunned. I kneel before you, Gomez said clearly, not because you're above me, but because we are equals. And I choose to honor that. Tears burned Selena's eyes. She reached down, pulling him to his feet. We stand together, she said, her voice shaking but strong. Or not at all. He smiled, fierce and proud. Then he turned back to the crowd. Tonight, beneath the moon that chose her, I claim Selena as my mate. My Luna. My queen. His hand moved to her neck, his fingers tracing where he would mark her. Does anyone challenge this claim? Silence. Heavy and absolute. Then, from the back of the crowd, a voice called out, She's Omega. Others joined. Rejected. Unworthy. Wrong bloodline. The hostility crashed over them like a wave. Selena felt Gomez tense beside her, felt his rage building through their bond. He would kill them. Would tear apart anyone who spoke against her. But this wasn't his fight alone. Stop. Selena's voice cut through the noise, amplified by lunar magic. The crowd fell silent, shocked that she'd spoken at all. She stepped forward, away from Gomez's protective presence, standing alone at the edge of the platform. You're right, she said, her voice carrying clear and strong. I am Omega. I was rejected. My bloodline is unknown. By every rule you've ever followed, I don't belong here. The hostile wolves straightened, vindicated. But your rules are broken, Selena continued, her silver eyes blazing. Because they measure worth by blood instead of character. By strength instead of heart. By dominance instead of service. She walked down the steps, moving into the crowd. Wolves parted before her, uncertain whether to bow or attack. I have been called trash, Selena said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Expendable. Less than nothing. I have slept in alleys and eaten from dumpsters. I have been beaten and rejected and told that my very existence was a mistake. She stopped in front of a young girl at the crowd's edge, no more than 12, thin and scared, wearing clothes too worn to protect against the cold. An Omega, Selena realized. Just like she'd been. But I survived, Selena said, kneeling to meet the girl's eyes. And I learned that survival is its own kind of strength. That choosing compassion when the world offers cruelty is its own kind of power. That refusing to become what hurt you is its own kind of victory. She stood, turning to face the entire crowd. I am your Luna not because I'm perfect. Not because I earned it through blood or battle or breaking myself into shapes that fit your expectations. Her voice grew stronger. I am your Luna because the moon saw what you couldn't, that the ones you throw away are often the ones who understand what it means to be broken. And broken things know how to heal. The full moon emerged from behind clouds, bathing everything in silver light. The crowd stood frozen, caught between old beliefs and undeniable truth. So yes, Selena said, her voice ringing across the square. I am Omega. I am rejected. I am everything you were taught to despise. She lifted her chin, the crown catching moonlight. And I am your queen. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then the young girl stepped forward. She dropped to her knees in the snow, her head bowed. Luna, she whispered. One by one, others followed. The servants. The guards. The wolves who'd been rejected, overlooked, deemed less than. They knelt in the snow, bowing to the queen who understood them. And slowly, grudgingly, the rest of the pack followed. Even the hostile alphas bent their knees. Even Lady Morgana, though hatred still burned in her eyes. Even Elder Kasha, ancient and proud, lowered herself before the Omega Queen. Gomez appeared at Selena's side, his hand finding hers. Pride and love poured through their bond, so strong it made her chest ache. Ready? He asked softly. She nodded. He pulled her close, his mouth finding the junction of her neck and shoulder. The mark was inevitable, sacred, binding. His teeth broke skin, and their bond exploded silver and gold, moon and wolf, two souls becoming one. The pack felt it. Every wolf in every territory, the bond settling over them like a blessing. Balance restored. The Luna accepted. The moon finally satisfied. Above them, church bells began to ring. Christmas Eve, midnight, the first lunar Christmas in 3 centuries. Gomez pulled back, blood on his lips, his eyes blazing gold. The mark on Selena's neck glowed silver, permanent and perfect. Mine, he growled. Ours, she corrected, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted like copper and snow and forever. When they finally broke apart, the crowd was cheering. Music swelled. The festival truly began, celebration erupting across the square. But Selena stood still, looking out at the city that had rejected her. The streets she'd walked alone. The alleys where she'd hidden from winter. The world that had told her she was nothing. She thought of the girl who'd been thrown into the snow on Christmas night. Nameless. Forgotten. Expendable. And she felt that girl finally, truly rest. Gomez wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her marked shoulder. What are you thinking? Selena smiled, the crown on her head catching starlight, the mark on her neck burning with silver fire. They threw me out as nothing, she said quietly, her voice carrying on the winter wind.